This is the Hyundai Alcazar. You already know it as the three-row derivative of the Creta. Over the course of this video, we are finally going to see it in full. We are going to talk about what's different on the inside. We are going to say what it's like to drive, what it's like to be chauffeur-driven in, and what the all-important third row of seats are like. There's lots and lots to cover, so let's get cracking. First things first, the Alcazar is not merely a Creta with a third row of seats plonked in. The Alcazar is 200 mm longer in overall length, has a 150 mm longer wheelbase that's best in class, and is also 40 mm taller than the Creta, though body width is unchanged. Chief rivals, the Tata Safari and MG Hector Plus, are longer, wider and taller still. That the Alcazar and Creta are closely linked is most evident at the front, though detail differences do help tell the two apart. The Alcazar sports a slightly larger and bolder iteration of Hyundai's cascading grille, and there's a hint of palisade in the thick surround and block-like pattern on the mesh. The manner the grille flows into the split headlamps is unique too. A closer inspection will also reveal a reprofiled bumper, larger fog lamps and a scuff plate. It's in profile that the Alcazar looks like the XL size Creta that it is. The added distance between the wheels, the longer rear doors, larger rear section with its quarter glass and more upright tail are the clear distinguishing elements. Helping balance out the larger dimensions are the really attractive and importantly bigger 18-inch rims. Notably, top signature trim versions also get footboards. You won't find any Creta-like split lights at the back, and rear styling is actually quite conventional. The angular lights get LED elements, there's a thick metallic band of chrome with the Alcazar name between the lights, while that large scuff plate adheres to the SUV styling checklist. Those sporty twin-tip exhausts do add some character to the back as well. What do you think of the way the Alcazar looks, and is it a three-row SUV that you're interested in? Let us know in the comments section below. And you know the drill. Do subscribe to the Autocar India channel and hit that bell icon for the latest from us. Switching focus to the Alcazar's interior. There's expectedly a lot of Creta in here, but with a fair few distinguishing elements. The Alcazar shares its basic dashboard design with the Creta, but there are certain noticeable differences. For one, the Alcazar gets a brown on black cabin theme, which looks quite upmarket. Now, the plastics inside the Alcazar are also not soft touch, but the brown plastics do have a textured look, which is quite nice. You'll also find new gloss materials on the center console and the steering wheel, which do help make a bit of a difference. You'll also find silver inserts on the door, and I really like the perforated effect on the steering wheel and gear lever. On the whole, it does feel that little bit more premium than the Creta does. Those familiar with the Creta will also notice some cool tech additions on the Alcazar. Now, leading that list is a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster. It's a fully digital unit, and the cool bit is that it gets three themes which are quite distinct from each other. Another addition is a blind view monitor. So every time you press down on the indicator, you'll get a feed from the side-mounted cameras as an inset on the digital screen. Now, moving to the 10.25-inch touchscreen, every time you press reverse, you'll be greeted with a 360-degree view. Now, that is a very handy addition on the Alcazar. And finally, there is 64-color ambient lighting. The ambient lighting is quite subtle and doesn't quite bathe the cabin in jazzy light. As on the Creta, the feature list is long. Headlining the list, quite literally so, is the panoramic sunroof that can now be opened with a new voice command that goes, "I want to see the sky." Premium looking perforated leatherette upholstery, 8-way power adjust for the driver's seat, useful ventilated front seats, a nice sounding Bose sound system and an onboard air purifier are some of the other items of interest on the Alcazar. Hyundai's eSIM based BlueLink connectivity suite is part of the package too, so you can remotely keep an eye on your car. If there's something to bring up, it's that while the touchscreen is nice to use, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay would have made it nicer still. There's no powered tailgate either. Here's a quick roundup of all that you get on the top spec Alcazar signature. Do note the Alcazar is available in 3 trims, but even the entry prestige variants get you lots of goodies. Before hopping into the middle row, there's a quirk worth bringing up. Front seat occupants will need to remind themselves to use the footboard when getting out of the Alcazar. Forget to do so and you'll inadvertently have your jeans or trousers brush against the potentially grimy footboard. Hyundai offers the Alcazar in 2 seating configurations. 7-seat versions that are suitable for large families get a bench-type middle row, though seating 3 abreast might not be the most comfortable. The Alcazar with us is the 6-seat version that features individual chairs at the back. The Alcazar's large rear doors open really wide, so getting in and out of it is quite easy. It's not all that high an SUV, but should you need more assistance, you always have the added convenience of a footboard. Once you're inside, you'll find that the Alcazar offers a reasonable amount of legroom. The front seat is set to my driving position. I'm just under 6 feet tall, and my middle row seat is set to its rearmost setting. I can move it forward to balance out space for the person sitting at the back. The seats are also very nicely cushioned, they're supple and supportive, but at the same time, they're not the most generous of seats, especially in an SUV that wants to give that luxury impression. Average sized adults will be comfortable here, but larger framed adults like me might find themselves a bit wanting in this area. And I would have also liked a bit more recline for my seat. That's about the maximum it'll go. However, Hyundai has packed in quite a few goodies to make your experience at the back good. There is a retractable sunblind for these large windows. You get a fold-out tray table with a pop-out cup holder, as well as a nice indent to put your iPad. Now, the other thing that's also unique to the Alcazar is this fixed center console. You can't move it, but it does work quite well. You get 2 cup holders here. There's a wireless charging pad at the back, which is quite handy, and there's also a neat little recess tucked away in between. Now for the third row. 6-seat versions offer tumble and fold on both sides to ease access to the third row. But what's the third row like in practice? Getting to the Alcazar's third row is fairly straightforward. It's a simple one-touch operation to tumble and fold the middle row seats, and Hyundai has also done well to give you a hand grip to ease your journey inside. Now, as for space, this middle row seat is set to a comfortable position for me. It's not at its rearmost setting, and even still, I don't have all that much space at the back. The Alcazar's third row is not the best in the business. Something like a Safari is roomier. Children and young teenagers will probably be best served by the Alcazar's third row. Now, Hyundai has packed in a few extras. You get blower controls, there's cup holders, and to ensure that all your devices are juiced up, you also get USB charging slots. Interestingly, while the third row seats recline, the angle is limited and the adjust is via the back. So it's more a feature to enhance luggage room than comfort. With all seats up, the Alcazar offers 180 liters of luggage room, which is more than rivals. There's a handy recess under the boot floor too. The rearmost seats as well as the middle row seats can be folded flat, giving lots of flexibility on house-moving missions. In case you're wondering, the Alcazar spare tire is positioned under the body. Before I talk of the driving experience, here's a quick overview of the engines and gearboxes on offer. Like the Tata Safari and MG Hector Plus, it's up against the Hyundai is front-wheel drive only. Notably, official fuel economy numbers reveal the petrol and diesel Alcazars to be the most efficient in the 3-row SUV segment. The version in focus here is the petrol automatic that pairs a 2-litre naturally aspirated engine with a 6-speed torque converter auto. The engine is a development of the unit that powers the Elantra and Tucson, and now in its 3rd generation it makes 159 HP and 191 Nm. And you like this engine for its tractability. You can build speeds smartly from low RPMs, it pulls quite neatly and cleanly, and really you don't have any deficiency in terms of performance. The broad spread of power, linear delivery and good refinement make the Alcazar petrol a relaxing drive. But what happens when you want more? Now you might argue that since this is a naturally aspirated engine, of course it won't have that punchy mid-range of a turbo petrol engine. And that is true. However, that's where the gearbox comes in. The 6-speed torque converter gearbox is really responsive to throttle inputs, and when it senses that you need more from the engine, it's quick to chip in with a downshift and gives you all the power that you need. The engine doesn't rev all that quickly and also gets a bit loud when you wind it, but performance on the whole is good. We managed a 0 to 100 kph time of 9.8 seconds, which is impressive. There are 3 modes, and it goes without saying that you get the most out of the engine and gearbox in sport mode. What I really like is that automatic downshifts are also quite on the ball in sport mode. The 6-speed gearbox also responds well enough to manual inputs at the pedals and shift lever. Don't get ideas though. The Alcazar is larger than the Creta, and resultantly it's not quite as pointy or eager to turn as the Creta. Then again, this is hardly the sort of vehicle you'd be driving hard on a twisty road anyway. Intra-city highway cruises are more up the Alcazar's alley. You do feel gentle up and down movements at high speeds, but straight line stability is good even if the Alcazar doesn't drive with the same heft as its larger and heavier rivals. On the plus side, the Alcazar is the most user-friendly of the 3-row SUVs. The Alcazar is no harder to drive than a Creta. It's easy to turn, it's easy to park, it's generally very easy to live with and city-friendly. Of the other things, the Alcazar gets standard fit rear disc brakes. Braking performance is decent, but there's room for a more reassuring feel at the pedal. Like the Creta, the Alcazar packs in snow, sand and mud traction modes that work in conjunction with the ESC system. But given that this is a front-wheel drive SUV, you'd be best advised to not get too adventurous. The 200mm unladen ground clearance does give some confidence on the rough stuff though. The Alcazar complies with latest safety norms but hasn't been crash tested by global NCAP as yet. What's nice is that ESC, Hill Start Assist, tire pressure monitoring and ISOFIX child seat mounts are standard. Mid-spec Platinum versions add in a 360-degree camera and blind view monitor as well as side and curtain airbags, while the fully loaded Signature variant features front parking sensors too. Over the day, we also briefly drove the Alcazar petrol-manual. Quick takeaways include the slick shifting 6-speed gearbox and light clutch that make this an easy everyday SUV to live with. As on the Auto, the 2-litre engine feels tractable, but it's not particularly quick revving and doesn't have an exciting top end. A preliminary performance run gave us a 0 to 100 kph time of 11.03 seconds. Hard driving will make the petrol engine guzzle fuel, so if it's max efficiency you want, it's the Alcazar diesel that you should be looking at. As you may already know, the Alcazar shares its 115 HP and 250 Nm 1.5-litre unit with the Creta. With us is the automatic transmission equipped model. The Alcazar diesel's power and torque figures do appear quite humdrum, and they're honestly nothing to write home about. But then again, Hyundai's engineers are quick to point out that the Alcazar is a whole lot lighter than the SUVs it goes up against, and when you look at power to weight and torque to weight, things even out. But how do those numbers translate in the real world? Now, my first impressions are actually more positive than I'd have thought. The engine isn't eager or exciting, but you know what? It gets the job done. Hyundai has altered gearing to suit the Alcazar diesel's load lugging requirements, and the changes do help. There is ample go when you're driving alone, and the 6-speed torque converter gearbox also works well to cover up the gaps in the power band. Again, the gearbox is not lightning quick but gets the job done. Interestingly, our preliminary testing figures gave us a 0 to 100 kph time of 12.57 seconds, which is about half a second off the more powerful but heavier Tata Safari AT's time. However, kick-down acceleration was about at par. But the true picture comes out when you travel with a full load, as I did earlier in the day. It's then that you realize that this engine is being made to do more than it's being paid for. Gentle throttle inputs and easy cruising are all well and good, but drive on an incline or ask any more of the engine and it will be out of its comfort zone. Every now and then you will find the gearbox downshifting to give the engine a helping hand. The otherwise quiet engine also becomes boomy when made to cart a full house. With the day's driving done, it's time to talk what the Alcazar is like to be chauffeur-driven in. One of the nice things about the Alcazar's rear seat experience is the visibility. The side windows are large, you get a good view of the road ahead from the back, and the panoramic sunroof makes all the difference and lets in a lot of light. It really makes the cabin feel nice and airy. Even from the back you can tell that the Alcazar rounds off the bumps really well. It feels particularly good and plush at low speeds. But when you up the pace, you can feel a judder every now and then whenever the Alcazar goes over a bad patch of road. And that's possibly a function of the Alcazar riding on larger 18-inch rims with lesser sidewall to absorb the road shock. A point to bring in is that at cruising speeds, the diesel Alcazar rides that little bit flatter and feels more settled. On to the matter of pricing. The Alcazar range starts at 16.3 lakh rupees ex-showroom for the petrol-manual model, while the top-spec petrol-automatic and diesel-automatic versions come in at just under 20 lakh rupees. The pricing puts the Alcazar in the heart of the three-row SUV segment, where the preference is for higher-spec models. See Alcazar pricing in perspective of a Creta and you pay about 3 lakh rupees more for a larger vehicle with a third row of seats, added features and a more powerful petrol engine. So, should you be interested in the Alcazar? If most of your running will be with all seats occupied, the Alcazar might not be the best pick for you. The third row isn't great and the diesel engine isn't the strongest either. The petrol's real-world efficiency is also something that needs to be verified. However, anyone primarily looking for an SUV to be chauffeur-driven in and who also wants the flexibility of a third row for the occasional outing with the clan will find a good match in the Alcazar. The 6-seat version in particular is tailor-made for this sort of buyer. The upmarket cabin and sheer number of features remind you that your money's been well spent. And when it's time to take the wheel, you'll appreciate the Alcazar's relatively compact dimensions. It's easy to drive in a way its rivals simply aren't. And that's the thing. The Alcazar might not be the roomiest three-row SUV, but by deftly offering reasonable space within a relatively compact footprint, it's one that easily fits into urban life. Ready? Over the course of this video, we're going to take a long look. Ek second, huh? Aaj ki car, Alcazar. The Alcazar shares its basic dashboard. Very steady go. Sure, average size. The Alcazar is also not high. यहाँ से बोलूं? The Alcazar is also not that high. You get a good view out from the front. It's easy to park. It's easy. Easy to park and